This ESPN podcast is brought to you by Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com.
Are the Olympics a supreme celebration of human athleticism or just a neoliberal Trojan horse? Find out on this week's Hot Takedown 538 Sports Podcast. You can find us on iTunes or in the ESPN app.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome into First Take. We are far away from Bristol, about 45 minutes from the Steel City. We're in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Day 2 of First Take's training camp tour. We are so happy to be here. Former Steeler Ryan Clark in the house, Stephen A. Smith, Max Kellerman. I'm Molly Karam. We're camping, guys.
It's a good place to be.
Right?
It's a good place to be.
We got a lot.
How you doing?
How we doing, guys? We do this.
A lot of good football played here. A lot of good football played here.
Yeah, a lot of good football. You know something about that.
A lot of good football.
Yes, and we have a lot of good football players joining us. DeAngelo Williams, Antonio Brown, and head coach Mike Tomlin. But first, in a story published today, ESPN The Magazine's Mina Kimes discusses the Bennett brothers, an in-depth look at both Michael and Martellus. They believe that the players don't have enough power in the league, that the contracts are short, they're not guaranteed, and they pale in comparison to the NBA. He said, quote, "Do you know what the NFL stands for? N-word for lease." Stephen A., strong words. Your reaction?
Very, very strong words. But before I go into it, I feel it's only appropriate that I go to a former star in the NFL who's got a Super Bowl championship, who is also somebody that represented the players as a players rep. I want to know what your thoughts are first before I even get into it, Ryan.
Well, the first thing, let's speak about the brothers. If you've met them, if you've talked to them, there's nothing they say that isn't calculated. There's nothing that they say that they haven't had an intelligent opinion on. So that's the first thing. These are not words they're just throwing out, or Martellus is throwing out at this time. Michael Bennett came along in the NFLPA as I was kind of ushering out right before I started to retire. He was always in the meeting talking about ways to monetize the player, ways for the players to make more money off of their likenesses. And if you continue to read through this, you say, okay, this is what they're talking about. How many black owners do we have? How many players are able to profit off of who they are, the way the league is making money? Initially, though, when you hear N words for hire or for lease, the first thing I think is, well, wait, everybody in the league has the same contracts. Everybody in the NFL. So it's not necessarily, to me, at first, it wasn't a black thing. But as you read on, he's saying, hey, the black players who make up most of this league don't get to make money off of who they are. It's not about the player in the NFL. It's about the shield. It's about the owners. When you talk about Roger Goodell, though he says he's for the league, he's paid by the owners. The bonuses he gets are for making those players, those people in suits money, not for making the players on the field famous. That's why he can make a $3.5 million salary but clear $40 million. And so when you look at these things and the way that the PA conducts business, I don't agree with some of the things he said, because they do their best to monetize the player. They do their best to get money into their pockets. But when you look at the whole thing, when you look at the whole NFL, the money that's being made, the players aren't making money as compared to what the league is bringing in each year. And that's what they're talking about. You look at the NBA, when you talk about LeBron James being able to step up and say things. Also, LeBron James as being the best player is involved. Chris Paul is involved. And he's saying until the quarterbacks, until the people who do get the most money step up and say, as players, we want more, we won't get it. And so I like what he said. I just think it could have been put in a better way, because it puts people off when you use the N-word. It makes them think that, okay, we're just being racial now. But if you look at the context of what he says, I agree with him in some ways. You just wish he could have articulated it in a way where more people receive it.
Yeah, I would say, look, first of all, I like the Bennett brothers a lot. I like what they have to say, particularly Michael Bennett. I think he's necessary in the NFL. If you look at the content of what was said, it's uncontroversial. That's an uncontroversial comment in terms of the content. Has there been a history in this country of exploiting African-American labor? Duh. You know, this is not news. That's uncontroversial. And football whether we like it or not. I know it takes kids off the street and it gives focus and it teaches the various values that we like very much, et cetera, structures time. And this goes for white players too, obviously. I mean, there are rich white kids playing quarterback, and the dads are paying a lot of money for them to do it. But what is also true is that football's exploitation on this level. What we're asking these players to do with their bodies is exploitative. And so it is a continuation in certain respects of rich white guys, by rich white guys, of African-American labor. I don't think that is they're making millions and yada, yada. Yes, they are. They're paid well for the labor, but it doesn't mean it's not exploiting what they're doing at a real physical cost. As you mentioned, when he drops the N-bomb, it does two things. On the one hand, it draws attention to the comment. I doubt we would be talking about this had he not dropped an N-bomb. On the other hand, it obliterates the content of what he's saying for many because they can't get past it, even though it's a very interesting use of the word here, because usually you can make a distinction. Is someone using this word with a hard R at the end, which is always racist and bad, or is it colloquial with an A, where the meaning is still very controversial and you could say it's bad and probably that argument wins, but the meaning, at least the attempt has been to co-opt the negative, co-opt the word away from the negative and infuse it with some kind of colloquial understanding of what it means. It's kind of splitting the difference, because when he says N-bomb for lease, he's making reference to a racist past in this country while also using the word colloquially. Still, it obliterates his meaning for most.
It obliterates his meaning for most. I get where both of you are coming from. I don't disagree with any point that either of y'all made. But I also want to bring it back to a football perspective in this regard. First of all, you have no business using the word in that incendiary manner because, again, it obliterates, like you said, the point that he was trying to make. We understand if we read further in the article where he has a line here where he's talking about, the article is talking about how the brothers know what it means to be labor instead of capital, growing up because of their dad, and talk about growing up. Black people never owned anything, Martellus says. I want to build. I want to make. Well, in making that statement, one must ask, even though if you're Michael Bennett, you may deserve more money, you may want more money, you may be upset at the contract that you signed with the Seattle Seahawks. Yes, Martellus Bennett feels he was also underpaid. He was also underappreciated in Dallas to a lesser degree, in New York before going to Chicago where he excelled. Now he's a member of the New England Patriots. But also let's keep in mind that although you're underpaid, you're still getting paid. So when you talk about ownership, whose fault is it that you're not owning in terms of the kind of money that you're bringing in? Now, granted, that's apples and oranges, because when you look at Roger Goodell and the money that he's bringing in, you find yourself asking, damn, how are you making this much money? And why are you making this much money? And what exactly are you doing? Because with all the mistakes that you are deemed to have made, the fact that you could literally walk away with $40 million, while the players have a hard salary cap and they're being restricted, that's going to be a point of contention. But it's a point of contention that the Players Association has to continue to work to address with the league, because they're the ones on the opposite side of the table from the league, which is why you had the courts, for example, saying essentially we don't want to get ourselves involved with it, because if you got face-to-face negotiations sitting across from the table with one another, that's y'all business to handle, not us, not society. Well, let's take that to the players. If you are a player, yeah, you might deserve $30 million. Yeah, you might deserve $40 million. Yeah, you might only be getting paid $10 to $12 million. But that $10 to $12 million should enable you to do some of the very, very things that you're acting like you're being prohibited and inhibited from doing. And that's just not true. The fact is, if you're Martellus Bennett, if you're Michael Bennett, two good guys, two highly intelligent guys, two conscientious guys, fun-loving guys, because they joke a lot, which is why I had to read this article, because I had to get in context. Were they joking? Were they serious? Because they say a lot of jokes that are a bit off-putting at times, but they are absolutely joking in a lot of instances and mean no harm to anybody. They're really, really nice guys and highly intelligent. But the flip side is they weren't doing that here. They were bringing attention to the NFL, the business of the NFL, and what it is, while at the same time acting to some degree like they're not benefiting to the degree that they're benefiting. Do they deserve more? In all likelihood, yes. But it's not like you're not getting paid.
But you know what's interesting, Stephen A? When you look at baseball, and there are various legal reasons for this. Baseball's exempt from antitrust rules. It functions as a monopoly. It's recognized that way. So the players have recourse that they don't have in the NFL and the NBA, by the way.
Yes.
But when you look at baseball, it must occur to a black athlete that is a more a whiter sport, at least. And the traditions have been that way. And that has the strongest union. And even though it's large rosters, not as large as NFL, but certainly much larger than the NBA, and even though it's not nearly as popular nationally, there's no salary cap, there's no max contract, and it's not even a full contact sport. So you might understand why, as you were the member of a union in a full contact sport that's largely African American, says why are there hard caps? Why are there max contracts?
I understand that too, but history dictates sometimes where we go into the future. The baseball contracts and the baseball union and those things, they started in stronger position than the NFLPA started.
And were assisted by our government,
exactly,
who played favorites with the sport of baseball compared to other sports. That's why I was America's national pastime.
And so so now when you're fighting from a deficit. It's not necessarily that the NFLPA is not moving football players forward. It's fighting from so far back. And I was a part of the lockout. And during the lockout, I was prepared to not play. But with the amount of people you have, with the contracts being what they were before the lockout, you didn't have 1,500 guys who can stay home and say, I can take care of it.
I'm not blaming the players.
I'm not.
I'm saying the league functions effectively as a monopoly, so that when negotiations come, when the CBA comes up, the idea that that's not a monopoly is absurd, because if you're one of the best players, you practice your whole life to be one of the best in the world at what you do, there's no other bidder for your services. It's ridiculous to think, you don't have to take the contract.
But that's true, Max, but at the same time, sometimes in today's day, we're blaming the leagues more than we should instead of leaning on the point that Ryan Clark just made. From an historical perspective, you're operating behind the 8 ball if you're the National Basketball Association, if you're the National Football League, as opposed to if you're Major League Baseball, because the Players Union has religiously and universally been very, very strong throughout the decades. But the flip side to it is this. When you speak to lack of ownership or whatever, I thought the most salient point that was made by the Bennett brothers was that when they asked a question about how many black owners are there in the NFL, because there are some black people who would love to own an NFL franchise, get a group together, do what you got to do. And so as a result, your board of governors, you don't have to let them in. You get to select who you will allow to have an ownership stake in your league under that NFL banner. So that's a strong argument. But as a player, even though I will openly acknowledge that they both deserve more money as far as I'm concerned, the flip side to it, and what cannot be escaped, is the fact that the money that you're making is not prohibiting you from doing more. And there are a lot of players in the league who get that money, who spend it, but don't necessarily do all the right things with it. And then they want to look to the NFL or somebody else and point the finger. And that's not accurate.
I think the difference in that is, though, they're not speaking about what they can do outside of football with the money that they're making. They're speaking of the money they are making playing football, the money that they're able to generate for themselves because of what they've been able to do. And when you talk about the owners and black owners and them, it's a good old boy club.
No question.
When they sat across the table from us in negotiations, we realized there was a difference.
But you know what? And we're here at Steelers training camp, and the Rooney Rule always pops up in my mind, because the Rooney's a great old school, Northeast football franchise and family and all that stuff. And because of the Rooney Rule, a guy like Mike Tomlin even gets a look. And as much as people object to the idea that they're just checking a box, they just have to bring a guy in an interview. But the fact is, when they did that, there was Mike Tomlin in an interview, and I'm quite sure Mike Tomlin in an interview blows everyone away in the room and winds up with a job. And I bring that up because it's about introducing people into the old boy network, into that
true,
club.
But it can't be gratuitous. It can't be a token interview, because if you do too many of them, then ultimately your cachet dwindles, because you're the guy owners call upon to come in and do the interview to make us look like we were really entertaining diversity when we really were not. So in that regard, I think that's something that we have to watch out for.
It's not that it's enough. It's that Mike Tomlin is the head coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers because of that rule, giving him the opportunity to get in front of those people. I'm speaking to your point about the NFL owners. Sure.
Right. I was here when that happened. And it was Mike Tomlin, when he came in, he wasn't the guy for the job. He came in and took the job.
Right.
He earned the job. But it also speaks to different owners in the fact that the Rooney Rule was put in to give these jobs the opportunity, these guys the opportunity for jobs. But you also have to take it seriously when they come in. You also have to take the rule at its nature and believe in it and think it's true and not use it as a token, not just to check off a list. Because there are guys that do that.
Right, but let's stay on the players because you're absolutely right about that with the coaches. But in the same, we're here at Steelers camp. We are here. This is Steeler Nation. They got 6 Lombardi trophies, okay, in their hallways. And we're talking about a coach in Mike Tomlin, universally respected, one of the great coaches in football, and probably the best interview in all of football. I can't wait for him to come on the show today.
Doubt.
But here's the flip side to it. We're also talking about Antonio Brown, who's universally recognized right now as arguably the best receiver in all of football. 136 receptions, tying Julio Jones, 1,800-plus yards, 265 catches over the last 2 years.
4.5 games with Landry Jones and Mike Vick.
That's 4.5 games with Landry Jones, Michael Vick, 375 catches over the last 3 seasons. And because he's 2 years removed,
he ain't getting paid.
He ain't getting
paid.
By
the way, I want to get this in before we wrap this.
We'll ask him
Charles
about that.
Barkley brought this up the other day. We talked about it last week in the beginning of the week. This always comes up in these kind of conversations. There's institutional or societal responsibility. In this case, I'm about the responsibility of the NFL, the institution of the NFL. And then there's personal responsibility. In this case, Stephen A., you're bringing up the players. People of a progressive bent will tend to focus on the institutional responsibility. People of a conservative bent will tend to focus on personal responsibility. Both of them are legitimate point of views, and they both have a place in the discussion.
I agree.
Right.
Totally.
Well, and just the last thing for me, this conversation got to a lot of black and white. And I think that's what the comment and using the N-word brought us to. It was a broader question. It was a broader interview and quotes by these guys because it's about the player and the owner and the league and the ownership of the league. And I don't mean ownership as in owning a team, the ownership that each person gets to take in what they do, their value, and what they bring to the table.
But that is why it comes down to black and white, because the absence of that power to the mind's eye on a part of a player ultimately takes you there. And that's the problem. That's why it couldn't be avoided. Yes, the N-word shouldn't have been mentioned, but the N-word was emblematic of clearly what he feels, because he believes that as a black man, not a football player, that's why this is happening.
Did it have a good effect or not? Because on the one hand, we don't talk about this if he doesn't drop the N-bomb. On the other hand, by dropping the N-bomb, many people's ears are going to turn off.
As long as he's willing to back it up, it's a good thing. I'm not saying using the N-word was a good thing, but the subject is a good thing.
And we're talking about it. We'll leave it there. But meanwhile, we go to Arizona. It is good to be Tyrann Mathieu. The man got paid. Mathieu is now the highest paid safety in the NFL. He agreed to a 5-year, $62.5 million extension. The deal includes $40 million guaranteed. Sources told ESPN, we know that's the number that matters for NFL contracts. Mathieu dealt with some off-the-field issues at LSU, multiple failed drug tests for marijuana use, and was even kicked off the team in 2012. He's been one of the NFL's top defenders. He also tore his right ACL with 2 games left last season and his left ACL during the 2013 season. He hasn't been cleared to return to action yet, but is expected to within the next 2 weeks. Matt, let's start with you. Will this deal make you forget Tyrann's past?
I mean, I don't want to sit here and just beat a dead horse every time the subject comes up. I don't care if a player smokes weed. They shouldn't be testing for it. They sell alcohol during commercial breaks. It is hypocritical to test for weed. Now, you can always make the argument if a guy does it knowing the rules, that's a problem. I agree. The irony in that stance is that the ones who are getting caught obviously maybe need some help because they're risking a lot for something that doesn't seem very important. In terms of the performance, because it's the opposite of a performance enhancer, I would say that should show up on the field. And if a guy is still productive on the field, the argument that he'd be even more productive is really nobody's business, in my opinion. There'd be lots of things that would make someone more or less productive. But let's talk about Tyrann Mathieu, the player. One of the most versatile defenders in football. Now, here's the issue I have. Adrian Peterson has everyone feeling like, an ACL. Big deal, it's an ACL. ACL on the left side, now on the right side. Both. If he is most of the same player, when you look at the Cardinals, who are favored to win the whole thing, I get it. The average in terms of total yards, defense that wins the Super Bowl is ranked 7th. The average offense is ranked 8th. Arizona last year, in terms of that metric, 5th in defense, 1st in offense. I mean, this is a serious Super Bowl contender. When you really look at them, what's the weakness? They even bring in Mathis on the offensive line, who, according to Pro Football Focus, was their highest graded offensive, guard anyway, since week 3 of last season. He's one of the reasons when we keep bringing up the Eagles suffering so bad and what happened to the running game and all that stuff. He wasn't on the team. They got rid of him before the year started. And then started for the Super Bowl champs, for the Broncos. When you look at Arizona, the addition of Tyrann Mathieu, if he's mostly the same player, I think correctly makes them Super Bowl favorites.
I agree with you. Tyrann Mathieu is big time. I mean, this guy, he's played some linebacker. When he's blitzing the quarterback, there's nobody better. Some have argued. I remember my man Brian Baldinger from the NFL Network. He and I know each other from our Philly days. What's up, my man?
Baldy.
I'm proud of him.
The fingers.
I love my brother. He's good people. He said a legitimate argument could be made that Tyrann Mathieu is the best all-around football player in the NFL. He's that serious. He's a playmaker. He's a ball hawk. Against speedy receivers, he's going to get his hands on the football. Against guys that don't know what they're doing, he always seems to know what he's doing, and he overachieves consistently to the point where you don't even question it anymore. And I think you could tell a lot by Patrick Peterson and others and how happy they were for him when he got this contract, which brings me to the point that I wanted to make about you. You bring up how you don't care if they test for weed, okay? My thing is, neither do I. That's not the point. The point is they actually do. And so for me, it's not about, there's plenty of rules. There's plenty of regulations. Look, baby, we got rules at ESPN. You think I wouldn't like to break a few of them? You're damn right I would. Let me be the first to tell you. But guess what? The golden rule applies. Those who have the gold makes the rules. And these are the rules. And so the question is, can you follow suit? The fact that this is a guy that was a Heisman Trophy finalist, then he gets thrown off the team for repeated violations of their drug policy, then gets arrested with 3 other dudes, at LSU, because of the same offense, and you had questions about his future where he was nuclear and a lot of people didn't want to touch him. To go from that to where he is right now, I can't even express to you how proud I am of the brother, because he, to me, epitomizes really the argument that I consistently have tried to make sitting up here over the last 3 years doing this show. I'm not talking, I agree with you, certain things shouldn't be tested for, whatever, but that's not the point to me. The point is what they do. This is what they're doing. Can you follow the rules or can't you? This notion that I would come on here and sing along and wax eloquently about the dangers of smoking weed and all of this. Look, man, I know too many dudes who do it.
Yeah.
Right.
They don't get their money affected by it. I'm talking strictly about dudes who get their money affected.
You're not being moral police.
So
go ahead.
Here's the thing. I agree with y'all. I came on here. I took a lot of flack when leaving Pittsburgh saying they shouldn't test for it. And that I knew people who did it.
Right.
But here's the thing. Here's my issue with it. We said, does this deal and what he's done make you forget his past? I wish it wouldn't. Here's why. If he was still smoking, if he had smoked himself out of the league, if we never saw that talent come into what it has come into the $40 million guaranteed, being the highest paid safety, we would talk about it. If this was Tyrann Mathieu being kicked out of the league for a year, we would sit up here and talk about it. So let's talk about how this man was kicked off the team. Let's talk about how he failed the drug test. Now let's talk about who he is now. Let's talk about him saying, I will get it fixed. Patrick Peterson saying, I will help him get it fixed. I was on the phone with him when he was getting kicked off the team. I was texting him after he got arrested, and he was a man who wanted to be helped. He was a man who wanted to be different. That's the difference between him and the people that continue to fail, the people that continue to let it affect their money. You have to want to be better, and he did. And now what he's gotten, he got hybrid money. See, that's going to be a new type of money. It's not safety money. It's not corner money, but it's somewhere in the middle. It's hybrid money, which is why when I met Jalen Ramsey, I said, don't fall in love with being the number one corner.
Well, let me say this. We're sitting here at Steelers camp. What's the difference between a Tyrann Mathieu and a Martavis Bryant? We got a guy that overcame his liabilities, his doldrums, whatever words you want to use that you find appropriate. He accepted the challenge. He accepted help. He's doing what he's doing. Why am I bringing up Martavis Bryant? It's not just because we're at Steelers camp. It's not just because we're going to have some Steelers up here on the set with us. It's not just because he's not here and possibly may have cost the Steelers a Super Bowl title. Not to say that that's definitely, but he's an elite number 2 guy.
He is.
You know what the problem that I have with Martavis Bryant more than anything else right now? What in the hell are you doing in L.A.? I mean, you're Martavis Bryant. You're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
You get suspended for the year. You get suspended for the year. And I mean,
don't be seen at all.
L.A.?
Don't be seen at all.
Mean, you want to go and rehabilitate and get yourself ready. I love L.A. Please don't get me wrong. I love the sunshine. I love La La. Please don't get me wrong. But you want to rehabilitate yourself because you can't stay off the week and you go to La La?
A lot of players in the offseason.
He didn't want it. To both of your points. I wish I could argue, but there's no arguing with this point. First of all, whatever you want to say about what is addictive or what isn't, don't tell me that. You can be addicted to anything.
Yes.
And I'm quite sure that someone who is willing to sacrifice their entire, very lucrative professional future because they can't, as Stephen A. says, lay off the weed.
You're addicted.
You are obviously addicted, and that's why I said the irony in all this and my position that they shouldn't test is actually the guys who continually get caught happen to be the ones that the testing actually helps in terms of their personal life in the sense that they clearly have a problem. And even beyond that, some guys want to be great. They want it. They are willing to sacrifice whatever it takes to be great.
And that's
Tyrann Mathieu.
He wants to be great.
Others happen to be good at a sport.
You know what
happen to be able to make a living at a sport.
Check this out. This is the way I'm going to put it. Some dudes want to be great because they want to be great. Other dudes want to be great enough to get paid.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Well, I think,
and that's what Herm talks about when you love football or you love what it brings.
Are you internally motivated or are you externally motivated? The greats are internally motivated.
He wants to be a legend. This is what I'll say. Going to LSU, he's the greatest LSU player I have ever seen with my own eyes. He's the best player to ever play in Tiger Stadium.
He's a bad boy.
Internal motivation. Those are the the Kobe Bryants of the world. They're getting up shooting in an empty gym. External motivation. I'm in a contract year.
You are with me shooting in the gym.
This miniature dude on a defense. Then we ain't talking about a running back or a quarterback. This miniature dude who plays on defense. Both safety positions, linebacker, blitzing a quarterback all day. Doesn't matter. Did you see not that you could see air, but you almost felt like you literally, like air was tangible. You could see it, you feel it obviously, but you could see the air come out of the Arizona Cardinals when he went down. If he were healthy against the Carolina Panthers, I'm not saying that the outcome would have been, different in terms of wins and losses, but I think it would not have been as lopsided as it ended up being.
By the way, top overall scoring offense makes the Super Bowl almost 50% of the time, and Arizona is going to be right there. They're going to be right in that running.
At the track, at the wall, it's gone! Wow! The other way for Corey Seager. That's some kind of power.
This weekend, two powerhouses go head-to-head in an interleague showdown at Dodger Stadium.
David Ortiz blacks one out of the park.
David Ortiz leads the Red Sox into the final leg of a West Coast road trip when they face Corey Seager and the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Red Sox and the Dodgers, Saturday at 3 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to start here. We have some power rankings. Sports Illustrated released their annual preseason power rankings as we head into the NFL season. So take a listen here. You can see the list right up there. Leading the pack is the Cardinals, followed by the Panthers, Steelers at number 3, Patriots at 4, and number 5 is the Broncos. Stephen A., let's start with you. Steelers number 3. Is that where you think they belong?
No, I do not. I don't think the Steelers should be any higher than 6th or 5. I mean, I think about obviously Arizona and Carolina. I think the Patriots should be ahead of them. I think the Packers should be ahead of them. I think the Seahawks should be ahead of them. I think Jordy Nelson going back to Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers helps them significantly. I think that when you look at not just the Seahawks, the Packers, but when you look at the Seahawks, Russell Wilson and those boys and what they've been able to do, they just tanked it in the first half against Carolina. That hurt them significantly in that divisional playoff game. But I think that they're going to be just as formidable this year because I see a maturation process continuing to shine as it pertains to Russell Wilson. I look at the New England Patriots. I think the acquisition of Martellus Bennett is huge because you got that 2 tight end set with him and Rob Gronkowski. The fact that they lost Brandon LaFell and he's in Cincinnati, who cares? The bottom line is they got Gronk with Martellus Bennett. I think that helps them significantly. Carolina is Carolina, and on top of it all, Kelvin Benjamin is back, looking bigger, stronger, faster than ever. And of course, Arizona is no joke. And now that they've re-upped Tyrann Mathieu, which we just finished talking about, I think that helps them as well. And Carson Palmer is no joke, even though at times he can appear to be in particular pivotal moments in the postseason. Bottom line is he can play this game. We see what happens. But the reason why I also, and the primary reason why I believe that the Pittsburgh Steelers are too high is because even with Martavis Bryant out and Le'Veon Bell is scheduled to miss 4 games, I look at the Steelers' offense still as a juggernaut, but their defense is suspect. They miss this brother right here. They miss a few other guys, and I look at them right now, and I'm just not satisfied. Their passing game was anemic. I know they've drafted on the defensive side of the ball. They've gotten younger. They've gotten some speed. I get that. Jarvis Jones, still a huge question mark. Shazier and Timmons and those boys, we'll see what happens along with Stephon Tuitt. I'm just looking at them right now, and even though they have elements in their defense where you have individuals who can play, by and large, I look at the Steelers' defense having a lot to prove. I told this to Coach Tomlin last year. When I came down here to interview him last year. And I'm telling you right now, I got questions about your defense. He said, we going to be all right, Steve. I said, I'm telling you, Coach, that damn passing defense, I still haven't recovered from Tim Tebow throwing a touchdown pass against
don't bring that up. Come on.
You can ask him again.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm just saying, those are my concerns about the Steelers. You cannot be a top 3 team in the NFL power rankings when your defense is such a huge question mark. That's my problem.
I'll say this. Let's start with the Steelers. They hope that they addressed the secondary in the draft, the corner in the first round and the safety in the second round. They hope, but you never know when you're doing it through the draft.
Still a rookie.
The jury is out still on that. It remains to be seen. You're right. I brought it up last segment. In terms of yards allowed, the average Super Bowl winner is 7th defense, 8th offense. This is a lopsided offensive team, at least on paper. And while in the beginning of last season I thought they had a chance to be the greatest offense of all time. I mean, you think about it, their O-line was playing out of control in the preseason, at least for what that's worth. They had some continuity there. You have Le'Veon Bell, who I believed at the time was the best running back in the game when he's on the field. Adrian Peterson's going and Gurley's coming, but right now it's Le'Veon Bell's time when he's on the field, and he's only the 3rd best offensive player on the team because they got Antonio Brown and Ben Roethlisberger, who, by the way, when we bring up the best quarterbacks in football, it's Cam, it's Aaron Rodgers, it's Tom Brady.
Better put Ben's name in there.
Roethlisberger's name isn't in there, but you can make a damn good argument year in and year out that he's just as good as anyone, and with the money on the line, maybe that's the guy you want. He's a Hall of Famer. That said, so all that said, you're right. It's lopsided, and the offense doesn't look like as big a juggernaut to start this season because Martavis Bryant is gone for the season, and that's their other threat on the other side of Antonio Brown. And Darius Hayward-Bay has never panned out quite to be the threat you wished, and you're not going to have Le'Veon Bell for 4 games. All that said, as I said in the last segment, in terms of the history of the modern NFL and the Super Bowl era, if you have the top scoring offense, and the Steelers might, you get to the Super Bowl almost half the time. It's 46% of the time.
That means
you get to the Super Bowl.
You don't.
Okay, but that's top.
It's a high percentage.
They got a shot for that.
It's a high percentage.
Now, I'll say this: the one team I don't think you can put ahead of this. I don't mind them being 4th. I think you have to give the Patriots the benefit of the doubt. Brady's going to miss not 4 games, not the whole season. If you have Brady for most of the season, the 2 tight end set, not any 2 tight ends either, with Belichick, I think you always have to make them the odds-on favorite in the AFC. I would say the Steelers can go right after them.
That's why I put them. I say they're fourth. And here's the other thing, though. If we're talking about, let's look at the numbers, just look at the teams. You look at Arizona and you say, okay, yeah, this team, the way they're stacked on paper now with Johnson being the bell cow in the backfield, he's a great running back. Not a good young running back, a great young running back. And catch the ball out of the backfield. That defense was stout. You look at the Carolina Panthers. They are Carolina. I expect Cam to come back this year. And the loss of Josh Norman, we're going to see it's not going to be a big deal defensively. The Pittsburgh Steelers have something, though, to me, that the Arizona Cardinals don't. They have Ben Roethlisberger. And we can talk about Carson Palmer and the year he had and the numbers he put up. But when the money was on the line, when Carson Palmer had to be the guy, he couldn't be. And that's who he's been throughout his career.
Ding, ding, ding. No, he's right. Carson Palmer choked under pressure. And that's the top-rated team, right? You're talking about the Cardinals. Second, the Panthers, their bet last year at least, their best receiver was the tight end. Their best running back was the quarterback. It's not like they're flawless teams ahead of the Steelers.
You're missing a point, and here's what the point I think both of you are missing. Dare I say, Ryan Clark,
I might be missing.
You might be missing something here. I hear where you're coming from about Carson Palmer. One could make the argument that despite the choke job that he put forth, they still were a better team than the Steelers from a complete perspective because of what I said about the Steelers defense. I am shocked that my man Ryan Clark, former Steeler, champion, did not bring this point up. Have you forgotten who they're playing? I mean, don't they have to go against the Baltimore Ravens twice? Don't they have to go against Vontaze Burfict and the Cincinnati Bengals twice? Oh, by the way,
Vontaze Burfict, the guy who handed them the playoff game?
Right. I know he lost it, but not during the regular season.
Ray Lewis and Ed Reed are not walking through the door of M&T Stadium.
I will not.
They're not walking through the door.
They still beat the Steelers without them last year.
They're not walking through the door.
Did they beat the Steelers without them last year?
The Steelers were a wide receiver away from beating the Denver Broncos.
Well, no, but it is true. Like, they have a built-in rival that it means more in that rivalry than the Arizona does or Carolina does.
Arizona, the Carolina, the kind of competition they have to face in the NFC South. Okay, don't get me started with that. I'm just looking at it from the standpoint that the road to prosperity is far more difficult for the Steelers than some of those other teams.
Just trying to build it up so they get more credit when they win.
You guys have them. Brian, here's my question though. You guys have them both around 4, right? The Patriots, but you were saying Packers and Seahawks. So you don't have Packers or Seahawks ahead of the Steelers?
I think the Packers will be better this year. Obviously, Jordy Nelson was a huge loss for them, and I think Aaron Rodgers is the best overall quarterback in the league. But I don't like the way that offense looked without him. I don't know if Jordy brings them back to what they were. Aaron wasn't what they were. You talk about lines. This line compared to that Packer line, loads and loads of difference.
If you gave Aaron Rodgers real protection, it is on.
Here's the story. The hits keep coming for Dallas, and by hits, I mean suspensions. Sources confirm that McClain's recent, Rolando McClain, his recent 10-game suspension is not just a failed marijuana test, but for another opiate, commonly referred to as purple drink. It's a combination of Sprite, cough syrup, and codeine, according to our Todd Archer, and first reported by Bleacher Report. When asked if McClain's career is over, head coach Jason Garrett said, "We're focused on the guys who are here." The Cowboys are already facing a $250,000 league fine for numerous suspensions of late. Stephen A., is it time for the league to step in with this Dallas team?
Absolutely. I definitely think that the league should step in. I don't think that they should leave the Dallas Cowboys to their own devices because, as far as I'm concerned, they appear to be an organization ill-equipped to handle this. Whether it's Jerry Jones being too preoccupied with marketing while trying to be the owner, the president, the GM, and to a lesser degree the coach, because none of us really consider Jason Garrett a head coach. We consider him a coordinator or a puppet master. Pick one or the other. That's what we look at him as. And I think that the Dallas Cowboys history validates everything that I've been saying. Now, in hindsight, just to backtrack a little bit, Ryan, because you weren't with us Monday in studio, I brought up how the whole Dallas Cowboy thing locked arm in arm with Dallas police officers. Everybody is trying to misconstrue that stuff, trying to get me to apologize. Let me be the first to tell you there's no way in hell I will apologize. I meant what I said. I said what I meant, and I mean it today.
Sorry,
because all I was trying to say was, obviously, it was the right thing to do. And obviously, we're all sensitive to that issue, and we need to stop the violence across the board. Yes. Violence against the police officers, violence on behalf of some rogue police officers against unarmed black people. Obviously, the Dallas Cowboys did the right thing. Yes. What I was saying is, in the throes of really, being in the news because of something like that. How about when the cameras are away and the news folks are away, that you conduct yourself in a manner that shows that you're respectful enough for law enforcement officials not to break the damn law all the time? Because I got a list of whole people. Now, I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to read the names, and I'm not going to read the offenses. But I've got
two pages?
I got 2 pages
Oh, good Lord.
of activity on the part of transgressions on the part of the Dallas Cowboys. Y'all keep messing with me. I'm going to start naming names all the damn time. Will I do it, Ryan? Will I do it? You know I'll do it.
We're not going to do it today, though.
I'm not going to do it today.
Not going to do it today.
What, is that in me? Will I do it?
You have done it, and you will do it.
Don't get me started.
You'll do it again.
Don't get me started. I mean, there's a whole bunch of names.
Just do it.
Nope. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not going to bring up weed. I'm not going to bring up violators because they used weed. I'm not going to bring up intoxicated manslaughter. I'm not going to bring up theft because you're stealing cologne and a pair of drawers.
That's his favorite. That is your favorite one, though.
I'm not going to bring it up, okay? I'm going to leave it alone. All I'm trying to say is, in the end, the Dallas Cowboys have shown a propensity to be ill-equipped to handle matters themselves. When you got the head coach, Max, Ryan, coming out sitting there talking about, I think we're fine. We're a model franchise. I don't have the quote in front of me, but Jason Garrett.
Great culture.
Great culture.
Great culture.
That was it.
Great culture.
Great culture.
For a great time.
Your coach is actually quoted as saying that. That's all I need to say. I'll leave it alone. Go ahead.
But when you say step in, right? When you say the NFL should step in, it would be an unprecedented move.
Yeah.
Not like the NBA saying, Chris Paul, you can't go to the Lakers.
Right.
The NFL doesn't do that. The owners run the league. They do. They run the league. But you look at the Dallas Cowboy decision-making. How many? No, it was great. I think all guys deserve a second chance. I think they deserve, if the league says they can play, I think they should get an opportunity to play on a team. But you can't give everybody a second chance. You can't give a guy a second chance. You see that your culture is not good for rehabilitating him and say, but you know what? We're going to get this one too. And then we're going to get this one just like him. And this one that was suspended or kicked out of the league or failed a drug test. You have to develop a culture of getting good people that are able to tutor these young men, that are able to help these young men, putting things in place where you win more of these situations than you lose. Because right now, all of these guys that we are giving passes because they can play football, the Dallas Cowboys are not helping them in life. Because if they go there and continue to do the same things, which it seems they do when they get to Dallas, they are not helping this football team and they're not helping these football players.
And it's not the 90s. They're not getting it done in the field anymore either.
Speaking of which,
2000s, 20 years. Don't act like it's 10.
Purple drank. I mean, after Jamarcus Russell, you would think that's the cautionary tale. Just because it's not a powder or you don't smoke it or something, or you come from a place where you see it around you, kids, that's a bad idea. Purple drank. To paraphrase Stephen A., stay off the purple drank.
Or how about stay off the lean?
Stay off the lean. Stay off the lean.
Okay.
But
stay off the lean.
Let me say this. The Cowboys' misery is like mother's milk to me. Oh, when the Cowboys fans are having a bad time. As a Giants fan, I love it so much. Again, like Eric Cartman in that South Park episode, I want to lick the tears off Scott Tenorman's face. Oh, Cowboys fans, you're just, it's delicious. I love it. That said, here's the irony of the Cowboys right now, okay? This is the irony of the Cowboys. As Jerry Jones has ceded increasing control to his sons, to Stephen Jones.
Yes, Stephen Jones.
In fact, they are moving in the right direction in certain respects. What do I mean by this?
They don't draft Johnny Manziel?
They don't draft Johnny Manziel. And I thought, you got to play for the Cowboys. And people like me were wrong, right? And Stephen Jones got his way. They devoted a lot of resources to the offensive line, which is not always the sexiest thing to do for the fan base. But 3 out of 4 seasons, they used their first-round pick on the offensive line. And here is where their culture goes
Tony
awry.
Romo deserves credit for that because he implored them to do it.
And they deserve credit for listening, But here's the where they go awry. They have a very high threshold for risk, the Cowboys. Now, that's like a baseball, a hitter who swings for the fences, so he strikes out a lot, but when he gets a hold of one, hits it over the fence. But what they've shown in recent years is that's been counterproductive.
Yes.
The reason these guys are falling in the draft is that if the best ability is availability, their problems make them unavailable. They can't even get on the field. I think if they adjust their kind of threshold for risk, their tolerance for it, Otherwise, in many respects, they're moving in the right direction. Now, in terms of should the league intervene, no, I don't think the league can intervene. But here's the real issue. If the league says these players are in the pool of players you can still employ, the Cowboys understand their temperament is then we're going to go after those players because we feel their stock is undervalued. In fact, where they go wrong is in evaluating the stock. Their stock is properly valued. That's why they're available to you. Right. They're not going to help you win.
Here's where I think you're missing. I think you're letting the Dallas Cowboys off the hook, specifically Jerry Jones. Here is why. Jerry Jones is such a marketing wizard, such a marketing genius. He literally lives by any publicity is good publicity, even if it's bad, because if you're talking about us, you're talking about us. And he has a fan base. That's the true reason why I hate the Cowboys. It's not because of the players. Dez and all these guys, I love these guys. I mean, you know, there's a lot of good brothers on the Dallas Cowboys. I don't wish for them to get in trouble. I don't wish for them to get suspended. I don't wish for them to lose unless they're playing against my favorite teams. I don't have that problem with them. The Dallas Cowboy fan base is the worst in American history because they are the most delusional bunch of people that I've ever seen in my life. You could be literally 1 in 15. The Dallas Cowboy fan base will wake up the next morning. We gonna be all right. Yeah. We gonna we win in the Super Bowl next year. They're totally delusional. They were in the mismatch last year. What was their record, like 3-10 or something like that? I'm talking about initially midway. They were like 3-9, 3-10. They lost like 8 or 9 straight. They were like this, man. We got a chance. We got a chance. We just one play away. But they were still fighting. They were still fighting to make the playoffs, though. I'm talking about the proudness of it all. I'm talking about sticking out their chest like we can still make the playoffs. Watch what we do. You 3-9, 3-10.
They still hanging on those Troy, Michael Irvin, Image.
Listen, they disgust the Dallas Cowboy fan base. Disgusts me. It's not the team. It's not even the owner because he's a brilliant businessman. It's their fan base, the worst, most delusional fan base in the history of American sports.
Maybe they sipping lean too.
I can't stand them.
Yeah, maybe they sipping on some lean. Can we finish this segment with your cautionary tale?
Stay off the lean. That's what we gotta do.
We will leave it there. We want to talk a little basketball here. We begin in the association, and this is pretty good. The Warriors made a splash by signing Kevin Durant, but it's not going to change how one Splash brother feels. Klay Thompson speaking with The Vertical on the addition of Kevin Durant to his team. Quote, I feel kind of disrespected that people keep using the term sacrifice to describe me and describe us, but I'm not sacrificing bleep because my game is not changing. I'm still going to try to get buckets, hit shots, come off screens. I want to win and have a fun time every game we play. Stephen A., could trouble be brewing? Could this be a problem for the Warriors?
No trouble. This is a highly intellectual basketball team. They're very, very smart. And anybody who knows anything about the game of basketball recognizes how great Klay Thompson is. Klay Thompson averaged 22 points a game, shot 47% from the field, shot 42% from three-point range. He's a career 42% shooter from three-point range, okay, and 45% shooter from the field. He's averaged better than 21 points a game the last 2 years. His 41-point explosion in Game 6 against Kevin Durant's OKC Thunder, I might add, shows me all I need to know. The Splash Brothers are universally recognized as the greatest shooting backcourt we have ever seen. Klay Thompson is one of the Splash Brothers. What he has done is what Kevin Durant is aspiring to do. Is he the complete all-around superstar that Kevin Durant is? No, he is not. But Kevin Durant came to his squad. It ain't the other way around. Kevin Durant wants to be a champion. Klay Thompson is already a champion. Klay Thompson has also been to 2 NBA Finals appearances, and it damn sure wasn't his fault that the Golden State Warriors didn't end up, or not sitting here today, rather, as back-to-back NBA champions. So I don't want to hear about him deferring to anybody. When you're that kind of a marksman, that quick release, that level of accuracy, and you put the ball in the hole the way that he has, you defer to no one outside of Steph Curry, and that's only because he's your point guard who's running the offense and distributing you the basketball. And last point, I find it reprehensible, and I've said this on several occasions, that the only time I ever hear anything really about Klay Thompson is on this show. His daddy is a champion who happens to work for our network. And we don't talk about Klay Thompson nearly as much as we should. This dude is a star. He's one of the great shooters in the game of basketball, and he deserves to have the position that he has. He has the right to say it, and I applaud Kevin Durant as well for being smart enough to recognize it and not refuting it.
Speaking of my friend Michael Thompson, he's a two-time
That's right,
champion.
Two-time champion.
Who was drafted first overall, was dropping 20 and 12 when the Lakers traded for him to come off the bench for Kareem.
That's right.
Not only didn't complain once, thanked his lucky stars that he got to play for the Lakers.
That's right.
And Michael Thompson has raised this young man right.
Okay.
Klay Thompson has the heart of a killer. Don't let that nice guy stuff fool you. He's the guy who draws the toughest defensive assignment on that team while averaging more than 20 efficient points on the other end of the floor. Let's not listen. Even in the playoffs, sometimes you'd see the offense getting ahead of itself. Guys are rushing shots. I didn't see one time where I thought, boy, Klay shouldn't have shot that. You know why? There isn't a shot that Klay shouldn't shoot. He has earned the right to shoot it at any point because there's a pretty damn good chance it's going in from downtown.
That's right.
Klay Thompson is capable of getting not as hot as anyone in history, hotter than any player who ever touched a basketball. How can I say that? The proof is in the pudding. He dropped 26 and a quarter about a year ago.
37 a year before
Excuse me. That's what I'm going to... That was his second highest quarter point total. And this 26 points in a quarter, which guys can't do alone in the gym, is your second highest point total. 37 points in a quarter, smashed the all-time record. He is there it is. He's gotten hotter, 37 points in a quarter, than anyone who's ever lived. That man can shoot. I don't care if he's playing with Michael Jordan and Larry Bird and whoever and LeBron James. Right. He can shoot whenever he touches it if he wants. Now, the fact is that attitude is going to help the team. That doesn't mean that Klay Thompson is not going to pass the ball if he can pass up a good shot for a great shot. That doesn't mean he's going to be a bad teammate or Kevin Durant's not going to be able to do his thing. All he's saying is the attitude that got me to where I am is going to keep me on top. That's all. He's not saying anything detrimental to the team.
Well, he's not saying anything detrimental to the team, but the most important point is that he has the right to say it because of the things that we both articulated. He's earned the right to do it. And also, let's keep this in mind. There's plenty of players. Like I said, Kevin Durant, I thought that was a choke job in Game 6. Just one game. Yeah. He didn't choke in Game 7. Didn't choke in Game 5. But in Game 6, I thought that was a choke job. Steph Curry, you look at some of his performances, and, he didn't resemble himself. What happened to Steph Curry? Steph Curry was on the verge of being a back-to-back champion and a two-time league MVP who wasn't going to be an MVP of the finals. Again, because it was Andre Iguodala last year, it was going to be Draymond Green this time around if Golden State had won. So when you look at it from that perspective, think about what we're saying about Klay Thompson here. We have never looked at Klay Thompson and said the moment was too big for him. We've looked at him and say, okay, the shot's not falling, with regularity the way that it once was. But the way he plays and the manner in which he approaches the game, you see no wavering in his game.
I don't want to take a shot at Steph either, Stephen A. I'm saying I don't want to take a shot either. I 100% agree with that point. There were moments in the playoffs and especially the finals. It pains me to say it because I predicted the Warriors were going to win the whole thing and Steph's going to be MVP and right the wrong from the year before where he seemed like there were moments, I hate to say it, I take no pleasure in this, where it looked to me like Steph didn't want it. I agree he wasn't physically 100%.
He wasn't physically. That's why I don't hold that against him.
You know what? Muhammad Ali had his jaw broken in the second round against Kenny Norton, still fought the rest of the way hard, and lost a split decision.
This isn't boxing.
I understand. I'm just saying, I don't want to hear the excuses. Who wants it? Klay Thompson missed some shots down the stretch in big games of the finals, but not because he didn't want it. Just because sometimes you ain't going to hit all the shots. He never didn't want it.
But let's touch on the biggest point of this debate. Klay Thompson has the right to say what he said, and really what we're saying is, and what we're asking is, should anybody have a problem with that because of the greatness of Kevin Durant? The answer is no. Because what Kevin Durant is pursuing, Klay Thompson already has.
Yep.
And Klay Thompson ain't come to Oklahoma City. Kevin Durant decided to go to Golden State. you have lost. I'm glad he didn't take that position.
I disagree with that. I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason you don't want Clay to change is because it gives you the best chance to win. Because that attitude that's made him the best two-way two-guard in the world, you want to keep. I don't care about the kind of unwritten rules about whose team it is and who's earned what in that sense. I don't care. Like Kevin Durant can come and piggyback their success.
But we're talking about
if it helps them win, Durant should do his thing.
But it has everything to do with it, because without that attitude, the Golden State Warriors never won a championship. Without that attitude, they would not have gone to 2 consecutive NBA Finals. Because if Klay Thompson doesn't perform the way that he performed in Game 6, isn't Kevin Durant and OKC in the Finals?
You know what else it is? You know what else that I like about that Klay stuff is his dad is old school, and Klay got a little old school gangster in him. Like, I don't care who came and joined this team.
I liked it too. He got fired up.
I'm not changing a damn thing.
That's right.
Yep, and he stepped right up to it.
That's exactly how he should be.
At the track, at the wall, and it's gone. Wow. The other way for Corey Seager. That's some kind of power.
This weekend, 2 powerhouses go head-to-head in an interleague showdown at Dodger Stadium.
David Ortiz blasts one out of the park.
David Ortiz leads the Red Sox into the final leg of a West Coast road trip when they face Corey Seager and the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Red Sox and the Dodgers, Saturday at 3 Eastern on ESPN Radio.
This guy, arguably the best receiver in the NFL, needs no introduction. Antonio Brown here with us. We're at Steelers camp. You led the league in receptions last year, tied for the most and second most in NFL history. Pretty good season for you. Antonio, thank you for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We appreciate it. All right, no secret, you're unhappy with your contract, but you decided not to hold out. Why didn't you?
Well, I have a lot of respect for Mr. Dan Rooney. Obviously, holdouts never go well, and you can never supplement being in football shape and being around your teammates anywhere in the world other than training camp. And that's why I'm here. The first step of getting better is showing up. And I want to start things off on a positive note.
Isn't that a problem for you, though, in the sense that no good deed goes unpunished? Yeah. So Antonio Brown, they know this is a guy who we don't have to pay him now because he's going to go out and put the work in and ball out regardless. So if we have another year, maybe if you weren't that type of guy, you get paid now. Do you ever consider that?
No, it's my job to be ready to go when the season starts. It's up to my agent to deal with all the other things. Right now, I'm just here singly focused on bettering my game and being ready to go.
Are you convinced that this might not happen for you this year, that you might have to go through this year and there is no discussion because the Rooneys and the way the Steelers do things, not with 2 years left, 3 years left, it's only when you got about 1 year left or less that they're going to negotiate your deal? Are you prepared to go this season knowing that the likelihood of you getting that contract extension is not going to happen?
Well, my focus is simply just getting better, letting Drew Rosenhaus take care of all those things. I'm just here to do my part in regards to being in shape and being ready and putting my wood on display. I know things will fall in place.
You had the same amount of receptions as Julio Jones last year, 136. Had 1,800-plus yards. He had a little bit more. But somebody like myself and others, I look at you because of what you do with punt returns, not just as a wide receiver. I consider you the best in the game. Do you consider yourself the best in the game, or do you think that there's somebody out there that deserves to be compared to you?
Well, there's no doubt, man. I'm one of the top guys in the league. There's a lot of other guys that's out there doing it. A lot of other guys I commend myself to, but I consider myself one of those guys.
And yet, are you I look at the Steelers, I go, damn, Ben Roethlisberger's going to the Hall of Fame. He should be in the best quarterback in the league argument more than he is. Le'Veon Bell, when he's on the field, that's the best running back in the game. Are you even the best offensive player on your own team?
Mm-hmm. Well, we got a lot of great players. Speak volumes of our quarterback, Hall of Famer quarterback, our center, our offensive lineman in general, our running back. We got a great team, not only great individuals, but a great offense collectively, and we want to do positive things.
Are you happy with the season that you had last year, or are you a bit frustrated at its ending? The hit by Vontaze Burfict, knocking you out, making you miss the AFC Championship game, in a lot of people's eyes, potentially costing you guys a Super Bowl berth, because if you were on the field, you might have beat the Denver Broncos. Have you looked at looking back on last season, what kind of thoughts have been going through your mind throughout this entire offseason?
Well, I got to come out and be more aggressive. Obviously, I wasn't there with my teammates to help them in the crucial moment of the playoffs, and that still stick with me. But I got to continue to grow and get better, and each year you got to take a step. And I'm just excited to be here healthy and ready to get things going.
How do you stop a shot like the shot Burfict hit you with from changing you as a player? You talked about being fearless and everything. How do you control that?
Well, you can't have no fear. You know, it's like a NASCAR driver who's been in an accident. You know, you can't get in the car with fearful thoughts. You got to have faith, and you just got to go out and be more aggressive.
Have you noticed a difference since then, or it's the same guy? Tell us the truth. Same Antonio Brown since then?
I think my swag got a little bit better. You know,
how could your swag have gotten a little bit better? I mean, no disrespect. That was a devastating hit. And Vontaze Burfict is a big boy. I mean, how do you get up with more swag under those circumstances?
Pick some swag up on the ground while you were down there? What happened?
Well, you got to be more aggressive. You know, you play this game long enough, you're going to get hit. You know, and that just come a part of playing football and being in the game. And obviously that hit actually won us the game, so it's called take one for the team.
Can I ask one thing?
Go ahead.
How do you feel about Vontaze Burfict as a player?
I don't feel no way about him. I haven't thought about him. I don't care too much about him. He's a football player, and I'm looking forward to competing against him.
I got to ask you a question about your teammate, because as great as you are, it's easier to be just as great, if not greater, when your number 2 guy is on the other side of the field, taking some of that pressure off of you because of his greatness. But Martavis Bryant has been suspended for the year. We all know why. I want to know what thoughts go through your mind when you consider the fact that his lack of discipline basically cost him and could potentially cost y'all.
Well, of course, of NFL, you know, guys going to have issues, and there's always going to be adversity. They allow more opportunities for other guys. And we got to be more sharper as an individual myself. You know, you can't control the things that are going to happen. All you can control is how you produce and how you prepare. And I think other guys on this team looking forward to opportunities. And I got to be more available to beat 2 or 3 matchups and be ready to take my game up.
But you've got to be, as great as you are, and I'd love to argue Odell Beckham. I'm a Giants fan, but the fact is there's no real argument that beats Antonio Brown over the last couple years. And as great as you've willed yourself and worked yourself into becoming, you have to look at a guy like Martavis Bryant and say, if I were 7 feet tall and could run a 3.2 40 or whatever he can do, damn what I would do with that. Like, tell me how you feel about that, watching a guy who's blessed in certain ways that you're not, unable to achieve on the level you're achieving, a teammate who you rely on.
Well, this game is 70% mental. It's not about physical. You know, everyone has special tools, but it comes down to your mentality. What are you willing to sacrifice? What are you willing to discipline? What are things you're willing to give up? You know, how important it is to you. And mentally, he got to get right. And if he want it, it's there for him. And it comes down to us as individuals and our mentality. So
you're saying that he has to want it, in other words.
We all can want it for him. We all can speak of his speed, how big he is, but those things don't matter if his mentality is right, if he can't be in the field.
It sounds like you're siding with your quarterback, Big Ben Roethlisberger, who basically said he was disappointed not just because of the act itself, but because of the fact that he felt like he was lied to by his teammate. I'm not asking specifically about that incident, but this team with this level of potential, what are the kind of things you all are saying to one another now that you're in training camp and you've got this Super Bowl, this season coming up with a lot of expectations? What are you saying to each other?
Well, we holding each other accountable. You know, if we're going to do the things that we desire to do and be a world championship type caliber team, we got to hold everyone accountable. We got to know every guy who got his hand in the pile is going to do what it takes to be on the grass and give us his all. And the man that's here now, preparing for that journey, and we hold each other accountable with such focus of being the world caliber championship team.
Who's the team to beat in the AFC?
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Who are you worried about?
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Not worried about anybody else? Not worried about the New England Patriots?
Why will the Steelers win the AFC North without Bryant and Bell for 4 games?
We got to look within ourselves. We got a lot of guys looking for opportunities. I think we're hungry. We're a young team that's been on the rise for a long time, and I think we are motivated and want success. And we're here putting in the work and the details of things, and we singly focus on ourselves. We're not worried about anyone. We just worry about getting better each day. And today, a beautiful day in Latrobe for us to get better.
You guys have a great offensive team, there's no doubt. But do you ever sit there and think, like, boy, if we just get it together, if Ladarius Green is really going to come through, not this year, but if Martavis can get it together, what can we become? Do you ever consider, like, the potential of this offense?
Well, potential means nothing if you don't unlock it. And we don't live in our fears and we don't live in our what-ifs. We just tackling it day to day, getting better with the men that's in the helmet. And we want to continue to work at it and enjoy the process.
This is a dual question, and I'll openly admit and confess I'm starting trouble here.
Yeah.
I got to ask this question, Antonio.
Yeah.
This defense, do they do a decent job against you in practice? Does the defense do a decent job against you in practice?
They try to do a great job against me.
I didn't ask you whether they tried. Yeah. I said, do they do a decent job against you in practice?
I mean, they do a good job.
Okay, fine. Here's my thing. Antonio Brown is arguably the best in the game. Mm-hmm. You just said they do a decent job against you. Why the hell can't they do a decent job against anybody else in the passing game? Because to me, that's what's holding y'all back from winning the Super Bowl.
Particularly when they practice against you. They're practicing against the best.
If they're practicing against you and they're doing well against you, they should be able to handle regular receivers they run across, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. That's why we're here in training camp. Those guys are embracing the roles of competing. And iron sharpen iron, and we all better in our game.
Do you see progress? And what progress have you seen in the defense, if you've seen it?
Well, I see a lot of growth. I think Pittsburgh has been always known for our defense, and I think those guys are hungry and wanting to get that name in that regards back in their favorites.
Before we get on out of here, did you really think that I was going to let you come up on this set and sit here with me and not explain yourself as to why you decided to go and dance with the stars? Did you really think that was going to happen? You really think what was that about, man? What was that about?
Well, there's a lot of things. I finished last year with a concussion. Obviously, it's hard to learn dances on the course of 5-6 days. So I was looking for something to sharpen my game and better my mental game. And it was absolutely a good time.
Is the Brandon Marshall bet on or not?
First off, Brandon Marshall don't own a Porsche. The Porsche was actually a Jets car. So tell Brandon to call me when he for real. Maybe he could buy my fans dinner every end of the day that started with a Y.
I actually told him he has to take into consideration who's throwing the football. You got Big Ben throwing the football to you. He's got Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's what I said.
With us now, Pro Bowl running back DeAngelo Williams, who last year ended up tying the league lead with 11 TDs. Not too shabby, stepping in nicely. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
First of all, congrats on the wedding. You just got married.
Yes.
It looked like you had a pretty good time. Please tell us about this Walking Dead theme.
Well, I've said all along, weddings are for women.
Okay,
us
that's
men
fair.
just kind of tag along. We say our dues. The only thing that hit us hard is in our pockets when we have to pay for it.
Yeah, okay.
And I said, you know what, I'm going to be different. I want to have an opportunity to have fun during my wedding, and that was my opportunity to have fun because I always wanted to be a walker. I'm a huge Night of the Living Dead fan, huge walker, and I love horror movies, and because of that, that's why I was able to do what I was able to do.
So nothing to do with the marriage zombies coming to get you? The single DeAngelo Williams, being killed by the marriage zombies? No symbolism there?
No symbolism at all. But I mean, I guess you can say that because I mean, once we do get married, we're like zombies.
I am not equipped to have a conversation about this.
I'm sorry, I don't feel like a zombie.
I'm not touching that at all. Let's go to football. I mean, we look at the Steelers right now. There's a lot of expectations, but obviously you got Le'Veon Bell. He's expected to be out for the first 4 games. You got Martavis Bryant. He's suspended for the season. We all know why. That puts a lot of pressure on you. You carried the ball 200 times last year. Everybody thinks you can handle it. Nevertheless, people still are looking at the Steelers and thinking Super Bowl. Talk to me about that.
Absolutely. I mean, you got to think, though. All 32 teams are thinking Super Bowl, but the reality is...
I don't think all 32.
Which ones you think?
Please, you want me to get started?
I'm not even going to start that. I told you. I know we pressed for time. I know we pressed for time. But that's everybody's goal. Now, whether they put the work in to be that 2 teams that play in the Super Bowl, now that's completely different. We put that work in here to get to the Super Bowl and to win it. We don't just want to get there and then falter once we get there. We want to get there and win it. There's no jab at any team because I know how people try to go through and they try to, thread out stuff that I say.
Right.
But There's always pressure on me, and that's the pressure that Coach told me there's only two types of pressures: pressure that's applied and pressure that you feel. And I want to be the one that apply that pressure, and I apply it to myself all the time. I always get ready for a 16-game season, whether I play in it or not. So I'm ready to go, and then once we make that playoff push and that Super Bowl run, I'll definitely be ready. So there's no pressure on me at all. I mean, a lot of people tease me and say I'm a backup, man, but what they don't understand is it doesn't pay like a backup.
A backup that ball last season.
32-year-old running backs.
33.
No, I'm saying last year.
Yeah.
32-year-old running backs who carry the ball as much as you did don't generally perform the way you did last year. 33-year-old running backs almost not. How have you been able to preserve yourself to perform at this level at this stage in your career?
It's not about preserving yourself. I had this conversation countless times. It's not that. It's just that the coaches don't give you those opportunities anymore. You look up all the 32-year-old running backs that have played at my age and see if they got the same opportunities that I got. All you have to do is have a coach that believes that you can carry the load, and you'll make it happen. And I don't think any of the coaches that are 30-plus years old that had a running back to do it believed in that guy once he hit 30.
Here's why I disagree with you. I disagree with you because I think you're selling yourself short. Let me explain.
Okay.
The fact of the matter is there ain't too many 25-year-olds that can do what you do. So you can't just sit up there and say, oh, there's a lot of 33-year-olds out there that can run the football and do what I do. They just haven't been given the opportunity. Maybe they weren't given the opportunity because they ain't good enough. Is that possible?
That's possible.
And how much is the offensive line? I mean, obviously, Le'Veon Bell, I think, when he's on the field, is the best back in the game.
Absolutely.
You had a tremendous season last year, but you can't help but notice that even from the preseason, you're like, boy, that Pittsburgh offensive line is going to be a monster.
We call them the Goon Squad. They've always been monsters. In years past, we've thrown the ball a lot. Now, since Le'Veon's here, everybody's taking notice to the run game, and they forget about our offensive line. They talk about his patience, but in order for him to have that patience, you got to have an offensive line that's able to hold those blocks and sustain them for a long period of time, and they do that here.
Is there something about having a head coach, too? I remember Tomlin's first introductory press conference when, he's there going, I'm like, who's this dude? Steelers football. Run the ball, stop the run. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm rolling with this guy. Is there something, imagine, especially for a running back, playing for a guy where in his heart of hearts, he likes that kind of grinded out type of game, right?
Well, it's not just that, though. You also have to understand, not only do we have a great offensive line, and I'm saying great, a lot of people put the Cowboys offensive line up there, and they kind of look at the Steelers offensive line and don't put us even in the top 5, but we'll change that this year.
Yep.
But you look at it I look at it from a standpoint of this. No matter how good your offensive line is and no matter how good your running back is, it all boils down to your quarterback. It all boils down to your quarterback. And having the quarterback that we have in Ben Roethlisberger, he takes a lot of pressure off us because if you put 8 in the box or 9 in the box, he will torch you at his change of play calling.
I got to chime in here because I got to get this in. I asked Antonio Brown the same question. You're a loquacious individual. You talk, you speak your mind, etc. I want to know what, if anything, did you say to Le'Veon? Did you say to Martavis? I want to know what kind of conversations you guys have amongst yourselves in terms of staying straight and narrow and doing what we got to do to get this done and not putting yourself in these positions.
Well, we've had those conversations. The unfortunate part about those conversations is that you don't think you have to have those conversations. So when you have those conversations, it's too late. It's already that they're either off the beaten path or they've already got into some trouble, and that has nothing to do with Le'Veon or Martavis Bryant that I'm speaking about. I'm just talking about it in general. But the conversations that we've had, because I don't know what's going on, and I hadn't asked L. Bell, hey, what's going on? And the reason why I haven't asked him is because when I sit up here and I talk, I get to talk like everybody else and generalize, and say, hey, but I don't know what's going on, though. You don't know what's going on. We know the appeal process is going forward. He stepped up. He said what he's had to say. Yeah. But we all put him in a box. And not when I say all, I'm not talking about myself, people outside of him, and say, hey, he can't stay off the weed. But, in fact, we don't know what actually happened. We don't know if there was a mix-up in locations on where he was. It ultimately comes back to him making sure that he have his priorities straight or he have his all ducks in a row.
And that's why I asked you, what do you say as a team? Not even to those specific individuals, but just coming together and making sure you flying the straight and narrow because we got a big goal here. What do you say to them? Really?
Well, we did say this, the Pittsburgh Steelers, our offensive side and our defensive side, we're the only ones that can beat ourselves. we're the only one that can beat ourselves. And we're not talking about in the game. We're talking about off the field.
Right.
Because our off-the-field issues are obviously public. So, and that's what we're having to deal with.
Gotcha.
DeAngelo, thank you so much. We always enjoy having you. Good luck this season. And I love what you said about the wedding. That's fun.
Yeah.
Enjoyed it.
It was about time we had fun, right?
Right?
You don't look like a zombie. You don't look like a zombie.
I mean, that's because I'm on set right now. I'm in front of millions of
But he
people.
can transform.
Somehow,
we saw.
some way, I don't believe that you would have gotten married if you felt like a zombie.
Exactly.
I don't believe that.
You know, we
You better
always
clean it up. You got to go home.
Clean it up.
I know.
Clean it up.
But we all had those head down cases where you just walk in the room and you So are we zombies or are we not?
Happy life, happy life. We all know that. And we're so lucky. We've had absolutely a beautiful day out here and thrilled to be joined by Super Bowl winning coach. You don't really need any introduction to this audience, though. Mike Tomlin entering his 10th year. Thank you for making time for us.
Glad to be on with you guys.
We really appreciate it. Coach, we know in the NFL it's next man up league. This offense is on pace to be one of the best ever in the NFL. Obviously, suspension 4 games for Le'Veon and then Martavis Bryant out. Who has to step up?
You know, I think we're going to be defined by our depth, and I think that's always the case. You know, sometimes adversity comes to you in different forms, whether it's suspensions or injuries or a combination of both. The emergence of young guys, the development of young guys always excites me, and I'm seeing guys taking the necessary step to help us in those areas. Guys like Sammy Coates, who's, you know, his growth and development over the last 12 months has been highly documented. But more importantly than that, we're seeing it day to day out here now as we begin the process of building our team for this year.
Coach, I'm looking at Sammy Coates. I'm looking at Mark Sweeten. I got a lot of confidence in them with Martavis Bryant being out. Even though Le'Veon Bell's not going to be there for the first 4 games in all likelihood, I'm looking at DeAngelo Williams. We know what he could do. We know what this offense could do with Big Ben. And Pouncey being there helps that offensive line. I'm looking at your defense. You and I talked about this last year. I had concerns about the defense and the passing, you know, the secondary. You drafted Burns. You got this kid. I think it's Sean Davis. I forgot his name.
Sean Davis.
Yes, that's right. I got it right. Talk to me about what you feel about your defense, because I'm really not concerned about the offense. It's your defense I'm worried about.
I'm excited about the growth and development of the defense, and those are 2 very new guys that you mentioned, and their acquisition and development is going to be critical. But it's the young guys that have been here that are continuing to grow and develop and hopefully emerge and take the next step in their careers are the real reason why we're excited. Guys like Stephon Tuitt and Ryan Shazier are no longer young developing guys. They got to be cornerstones of this unit, and from what we've seen thus far, they appear to be ready to take that step.
Bud Dupree, too. You feel the same way about Bud Dupree, right?
No question.
Okay.
Coach, when you were first announced as the Steelers head coach, and I'm like Stephen A., my first love as a team actually were the Steelers, because when I was a kid, you know, Mean Joe Green was on the Great Space Coasters, right? The Steelers won the Super Bowl every year. And I'm like, who's Mike Tomlin? And you get up Steelers football, run the ball, stop the run. I said, oh, okay, I could go with this guy. This guy, I could see why players would. It must particularly gall you in terms of your hard-nosed kind of mentality and sensibility when your defense is soft, when it's good. How does a Mike Tomlin team ever get to a place, I'm really curious, where the defense is the problem?
Well, we didn't suggest that people ran on us successfully, so let's
it is a secondary. It is a secondary.
There's a certain feeling when they throw the ball over the top of you. You hate that,
right.
But nobody running through us, and that's remained the same.
Fair point.
I'll let the stats speak for themselves in that regard. So, but to your point, we do want the defense to be a strength of our football team, and the reason why we've won. The makeup of our team hadn't been such over the last several years, but at the end of the day, man, we got to let egos and our vision of how we win to the side some and do what's required to get out of stadiums with W's and play to our strengths. And in recent years, the offense has been our strength, and we can't hate that.
Yeah, I know you hate losing. You always hate losing. You're a Super Bowl champion. You've taken the team to 2 Super Bowls as this team's coach. I know you don't like losing. But last year when y'all lost to Denver in that divisional playoff game, it seemed to hit you when I watched you in the postgame. It seemed to hit you just a touch harder than other losses in the past have hit you. Talk to me about why it appeared to be that way.
Because I thought that group had the unique closeness required to be world champs. Mm-hmm. And forget playmaking ability and the things that you do inside a stadium. I thought that group had the unique closeness that was required for us to be world champs. They told each other the truth. They held each other accountable. We weren't perfect. We made mistakes, but we quickly acknowledged them and we moved on from them. And those characteristics that really revealed themselves over the course of the journey is what created those feelings.
Did you find yourself, and I know you're not one of those guys about ifs and could-haves and would-haves, but it had to sit up there and just pause you for a second. If Ben Roethlisberger was healthy, if he wasn't fighting through some stuff, if Antonio Brown, hadn't gotten concussed by Vontaze Burfict, if he was available in that particular game, do those kind of thoughts enter your pragmatic mind, even in moments like that?
After the fact, when I get a little distance away from the scenario, I can assess it in that way. I don't know that I allow myself to acknowledge those type things in the midst of it. I'm just paid to overcome issues such as the ones you mentioned, and so is our team, and we embrace the responsibility that comes with our positions in that area.
Coach, by the resume, by the record, Bill Belichick's the best coach in the NFL, maybe in history. You are one of the top coaches in the NFL, but a lot of people's favorite coach. Like, you happen to be my favorite coach. I'm a Giants fan. And when you talk to players and personnel around the league, and you mention that, they all say the players love playing for Mike Tomlin. What does that mean for you, that players love to play for you?
Man, we all know our responsibility and what we have in front of us in here on a day-to-day and week-to-week basis. That is what it is. It's okay. We might as well have fun while we do it. And along those same lines, I also believed in being upfront and telling them the truth. And I think those are two prongs, if you will, of my approach that I think players appreciate. We try to have as much fun as we can in the midst of the work, and we acknowledge and talk truthfully about things we need to talk about.
Coach, changing gears real quickly, a few weeks ago, I was on vacation at that time. He was about to come on the show. It was in the news. We weren't on the air, but a lot of news was being made about the Rooney Rule in the National Football League. We heard Tony Dungy even speak about it from the standpoint that the original intent of the rule wasn't something that was being exercised in this day and age. People look at you, obviously,